Malory Towers, Chapter 4 Settling In. On the first day of the term, Miss Pucker announced who the head girl of the form was to be. The class were all agog to hear her and sat like mice while she rustled her papers and looked for her pencil. I am sure you all want to know who has been chosen for head girl this term, she said. Well, I will not keep you in suspense long. After a short discussion at the staff meeting, we decided on Sally Hope. The girls clapped and Sally blushed red. She was very pleased indeed, Miss Parker went on, glancing at her notes as she spoke. You may perhaps like to know what girls were in the running for the position. Darrell Rivers was, Jean MacDonald was another, Winnie Toms was a third. Everyone expected to hear Alicia's name mentioned or Irene's, but Miss Parker did not give any more names at all. Irene didn't mind. She knew she was scatterbrained and she didn't in the least want to be head of the form, so long as she had the music and she was happy. Being head of the form might rob her of some of her practice time, but Alicia didn't mind. She had been top of the form last term. She had a fine brain and excellent memory, and although she never needed to work hard because she had pleased to help her, still she certainly had done well last term. And yet she wasn't even in the running for the position of a head girl. She bit her lips and wished she could stop herself going red. There's too much favoritism, she told herself fiercely. Just because I play the fool sometimes and upset the mistresses, they won't even consider me as head. But Alicia was not altogether right. It was not playing the fool that made the staff pass over her name, but something else. It was Alicia's hardness to those she didn't like, her sneers at those less clever than herself, who needed help, not taunts. Often the staff laughed privately over Alicia's ridiculous tricks and enjoyed them, but nobody liked her wild and unruly tongue and the sharp things it could say. She'll get a lot of admiration and envy, but she won't get much love or real friendship from others. Miss Grayling had said at the staff meeting. As for Betty, her friend, she's clever too, but a little empty-headed compared with Alicia, who really has it in her to make good if she tried. It isn't Alicia's brain that is at fault, it's her heart. And so the choice had been made. Sally hoped she, the steady, loyal, kindly, sensible Sally, Darrell's best friend, Sally might not be top of the form, but she would always listen to anyone in a difficulty. Sally would not do brilliantly in exams as Alicia would, but she would always help a younger girl at games or lessons. She would be completely fair and just as head girl of the form, and she wouldn't stand any nonsense. Everyone in the form knew that a good choice had been made, although some of them would have welcomed a bad choice, for they didn't like Sally. Gwendoline was furious. So was Betty, who had hoped that Alicia would have been chosen. So were one or two of Betty's friends, not in Sally's dormy. Darrell squeezed Sally's arm. Jolly good, she said. I'm glad. Won't your mother be pleased? You'll be head of our dormy too, Sally. Tough for Gwendoline. It certainly was most annoying for Gwendoline that night in bed when Sally took command. Sally did not mean to use her new power too much or too soon, but she knew that if Gwendoline began to be silly again, she would have to make a stand at once. Gwendoline didn't understand leniency, but took advantage of it. So, as soon as the whispering began again after lights out, Sally spoke up. Shut up, Gwendoline. I told you that last night. I wasn't head of Tommy then, but I am now, so shut up when I tell you. Poor Daffy's homesick, began Gwendoline. It won't make her any better if you whisper stuff and nonsense into her ear, said Sally. There was a short silence. Then Belinda's voice cut through the darkness, asking a question. Sally, what happens if we disobey and go on whispering when the head girl has said we are not to? Belinda's voice cut through the darkness, asking a question. Sally, what happens if we disobey and go on whispering when the head girl has said we are not to? Nobody ever does, said Sally grimly, but I believe there is an unwritten law at Malory Towers that if anyone makes herself a nuisance at night, the other girls must send her to conventry. Oh, said Belinda, and snuggled down in bed, grinning to think of what Gwendoline would feel now. Would she whisper again or not? Gwendoline had opened her mouth to continue her conversation with Daphne, but when she heard Belinda's question and its answer, she shut it again, shocked. How dare Sally hint such a thing to a second former? She debated whether or not Sally was just saying it to scare her, but remembering Sally's grim voice, she decided she wouldn't risk it. It would be too humiliating if Sally really did carry out a threat. Daphne would never respect her again, so there was peace in the dorming. And when Mentron came silently to the door, there was only the regular breathing of 10 girls to be heard. 8 were fast asleep, but 2 were awake. They were Gwendoline and Helen. Gwendoline was cross, and that always made her wakeful. Ellen was thinking about her work. She had done fairly well in the test papers that morning, but not brilliantly. Was she really up to the second form work here? Oh, yes, she had won that scholarship, but it wasn't brains that had done it, only hard work. Was it going to be terribly hard work here to keep up with the others? Her brain didn't seem to work so easily as it used to. Helen was worried and did not fall asleep till long after Gwendoline. It took the new girls a few days to get into the way of things. Helen and Daphne learned their way about more quickly than Belinda, who kept turning up in the wrong classroom continually. She would go into the first form classroom instead of the second form, and Miss Potts got quite annoyed with her. Belinda, don't tell me you are here again, she would say. Do you particularly want to work with the first form? Of course, if you really feel that way, the work of second form is, but by the time Belinda had fled, muttering hurriedly apologies, she would appear in her own form room a minute or two late, giggling. I'm so sorry I got lost, Miss Parker, she would say, and subside into a seat. I'll look after her a bit, Miss Parker, said Irene, but Miss Parker forbade that immediately. That would mean the two of you getting lost, she said. You'll probably be down in the swimming pool waiting for a diving lesson while we are all up here doing maths. It's time Belinda learned to look after herself. After all, she's been here 3 days now. Yes, Miss Parker, said Belinda meekly and began to make a little sketch of the teacher on her blotting pad. She was always drawing, wherever she was. She kept a little sketchbook in her pocket and filled it with odd drawings of the girls and flowers on the window sill, the view from the window, anything that caught her observant eye. Mamselle Dupin, plump, short, and beady-eyed, holding a longitude close to her eyes, was a source of delight to Belinda, for she was so easy to draw. Nearly every girl in the class now had a neat little sketch of Mamselle marking her place in her French grammar. It was the ambition of the class to have as a marker caricatures of all the mistresses taking their different classes. Miss Carton for the history books, Miss Grayling for the scripture exercise books, Mr. Young for the school song book, and so on. Belinda had promised to do one for each girl as a marker, providing that they would tidy her drawers for her, keep her desk spick and span, and generally see that whatever she forgot was done before she got into trouble. I simply can't help forgetting things, she explained. I'm even worse than Irene. If I get into too many rows, I get upset and can't draw. That's awful. Don't worry, we'll run around you. All right, said Alicia, looking in delight at the sly drawing Belinda had done of Mr. Young, the singing master. There he was, with his funny little moustache twitched up at the ends, his bald head with the 3 or 4 hairs plastered down and middle, his too high collar, and his eyes large behind their glasses. You really are a marvel, Belinda, said Betty, looking over Alicia's shoulder at the drawing. What will you draw for me if I promise to take over your week of classroom duties when your turn comes? Thus Belinda made her bargains and got out of all the jobs she didn't want to do. Miss Parker was amazed to find the girls doing so much for Belinda. Belinda exasperated her and with her irresponsible ways, and she couldn't think why the girls ran around her so much. It's odd, she said to Mamselle. They never do that for Irene, who is almost as bad. Do they like Belinda so much then? I can't see what's there in that silly girl. to make them fuss around her so much. Why, I even saw Gwendolyn tidying out her desk for her this morning instead of going off at break. Ah, Belinda has the artistic temperament, said Mamselle. She has no time for such things as tidying desks and making beds. I myself have an artistic temperament, but in this so English school, it gets no sympathy. You English, you do not like things. No, we don't, said Miss Parker, who had heard a good many times before about Mamselle Duffer's artistic temperament. It usually took the form of groaning over such laborious jobs as marking papers, marking out long lists, and so on. Mamselle's artistic temperament was always at war with such tasks, and she tried in vain to hand them over to more practical people such as Miss Potts or Miss Parker. We must be patient with such as Belinda, went on Mamselle. How I've suffered because people. Well, believe me, Belinda will suffer too if she doesn't get rid of some of her ways, said Miss Parker grimly. I know what Miss Potts had to put up with in Irene the last year. She put a bit of sense into her, thank goodness, and I can deal with her. Belinda's got to toe the line too. It's a pity all the girls seem bent on doing so much for her. Nobody told Miss Parker the real reason, and although she tried hard to find out, she couldn't. Nobody showed Miss Parker any of the drawings either. Belinda had a malicious pencil sometimes, and just hit off the weak points in her subjects. Miss Parker's big nose always appeared in her drawings just a little bit bigger than life. Mamselle Rogier was always bonier than she really was. Mamselle Dupin was rounder and fatter. No, the girls certainly didn't want to show those clever caricatures to their teachers. The only teacher who was really delighted with Belinda was Miss Linney, the art mistress. She was young and light-hearted with a great sense of fun. She soon found out Belinda's gift for art and encouraged her all she could. I'm going to enjoy myself here, said Belinda to Irene. Miss Linney's thrilled with me and is helping me no end. And I've got out of all the silly jobs I hate. Emily's even going to darn my stocking for me. You are lucky, said Irene enviously. I wouldn't mind swapping some of my music composition if someone would do jobs for me, but nobody wants the music I write. But they all want your funny drawings, Belinda.